Hi, my name is Jennifer Bollinger Franklin. I am 36 years old, and when I first got approached about being a part of Mission on a Mountain in the project, I was extremely excited because I told Miss Ann I could just shout from the rooftop just how powerful and how great our God is, and I knew that what God had been doing in my life for the last 36 years, all of my life, that um, it was a story I felt like I wanted to share. And it's not a story I share readily, or a lot of people who know me don't know that for the last 36 years, since March 14th, 1984, that I was born with a genetic disease called cystic fibrosis. And I don't even know, a lot of people don't even know what that is. Um, but it is a genetic disease, like I said, and no one else in my family has ever had this disease. And when I was born in 1984, the life expectancy was 12 years old. So even right now, you can see that I'm a miracle sitting here because I'm three times that age at this point. But, I think one of the things that I have always felt so strongly about is that we serve a miraculous God. And I'll just share a little bit about my story because I think what I have to share is no different than probably the struggles that each of us go through, the things that we have to deal with unexpectedly. And I think the one thing that I would encourage people is to see God for who He is and ask for God to show up and display His glory without writing the end of the story. And I love to write, and I've always said, God, I want you to script our story together, because I think so often we can look at a prognosis and just begin writing our own story. God, I'll deal with this, take it from there. So I say all that. For the first 10 years of my life, I was blessed with great health. Other than my little routines of, every time I ate, I took enzymes. Every time, I was sick, we went to the doctor. I went to the doctor every other month, or fairly routinely. I would drive from Baton Rouge to New Orleans to go to the Tulane Specialty CF clinic. And I felt like for the most part, my childhood was normal. I never really asked why I took all these enzymes or, was coughing. A lot of times I just struggled gaining weight, but I just took that as, this is the way God made me, and I'll keep trucking. And then when I was about 10 years old, my parents started noticing that I was coughing a lot. I wasn't gaining any weight. In fact, I'd probably stayed the same weight from kindergarten to almost fifth grade. And so we went to the doctor, and at that point they said, I was sick, and I don't remember much because I remember my parents were crying, and I was probably not privy to a lot of the information, but I started doing little daily nebulizer routines and chest therapy. And so since the age of 11, I have been doing that as part of my daily routine. It's about 45 minutes every morning, 45 minutes every night. And so you can imagine sometimes when you work a busy schedule, I've always worked for an elected official, whether it be a governor or worked on the Hill, that those 45 minutes in the morning and the evening really started, cramping my lifestyle, I guess. But say all that, I was always very blessed with great health. And when I was about 16, I felt like something was wrong, and we discovered that in addition to CF affecting your lungs and your pancreas, producing enzymes and really a lot of other things, CF also affects your ability to make insulin. And I was one of the patients diagnosed with, for all intents and purposes, type 1 diabetes. So, I learned to give injections, learned to take shots. And I always joked, if someone who has such a fear and is so squeamish around needles as I am can give myself a shot, then that alone is a miracle. And again, I continue to thrive. I, always was able to go through school and live life like most normal children. In fact, most people always said, I do more than the average person. And when they find out I have CF, they're actually more surprised. But I've always just had such a joy for life because I felt like each day was such a gift. And I realized that really propelled me in how I lived my life. But I think one of the big things is I was just so thankful. God, thank you for today. Thank you for each day. And I always felt like being able to say thank you, even when things aren't easy. Um, I just have always prayed that that would touch God's heart in a way that just to thank you for the great times or just when things are easy. I always hoped that would mean a lot more. And I say all that, when I was 21, I had an incident where I ended up in the hospital for 3 days. And we found out, the cysts that had been on my pancreas that they just discovered were likely the reason that, I had diabetes. And I remember asking the doctor, and again, I always think it's such a reminder. You can tell when you have a doctor who knows the Lord and who carries a hope beyond just a medical diagnosis. And this one, unfortunately, did not. And I only saw her a couple times, but she said, why would we remove a pancreas or a cyst from your pancreas when your organs are already failing? And I thought, never thought of it like that, but continued to truck on. And when I was about 20, in March of 2007, I was 24, and I had just celebrated my 24th birthday, and I remember I just had been sick. I had been sick since December that year, and I had to look back. I remember having a great time when LSU won the national championship in New Orleans. There was a lot to celebrate that month, but I could never shake this cough, and I continued to go to the doctor. And unfortunately, my doctor at Tulane had left the year before. And so I saw a doctor who really didn't know me, and he missed a couple diagnoses. And so for about 3 months, I had pneumonia undiagnosed. And, pneumonia undiagnosed for just the average person can be a serious condition. And when you have cystic fibrosis, it really can mean life or death. And so thank goodness for a persistent mom and a praying mom and some recommendations, but we found a great doctor in Baton Rouge. And by the time I saw him, he looked at me, he said, well, I'll give you a week. I'll give you a week to turn this around. And I said, well, what about after this week? He said, well, we'll just take this week. And I am thankful that Dr. Thomas is a Christian who knows God and knew that whatever diagnosis he was giving me was more, was not just a diagnosis, but also there was a spiritual component to it. And I say all that after a week of trying some new medicine, I came back. And at that point I knew that my body was dying. I had been unable to really function for about 2 weeks. It's almost like I started seeing everything in black and white. Like I was slipping from this world very slowly, but I didn't have enough energy to fight it or to do anything. But I really didn't feel like I had to, and I'll explain why. But when I saw the doctor, he said, your lungs are functioning at 22%. We can't put you on a lung transplant list at this point because your body is just too weak to handle that. And he said, your blood oxygen level is 82%. And, and these were things I had never experienced before. But, looking back now, those numbers were significant. I'm sure those of you in a medical community could say that's not good at all. But for me, I just knew that it felt like life was slipping from me. And so I was immediately put on the hospital. I was on, heavy rounds of antibiotics, oxygen, all these things. And, given sort of the weak prognosis that I had, I never once doubted where I would be at the end of that week. I never, even though I felt myself dying, I knew what the end of the story was. And maybe that's where I'll pause and just say, I have always lived my life knowing that God was taking care of me. But there were times in my life, there were people in my life who spoke over me and said, you will see your children's children. In fact, I had been with a good family, some friends. We had gone up to a prophetic retreat and ministry, and a team had prayed over me. And I was 18 at the time, and now I'm talking about when I'm 24, but 6 years prior, a word had been given to me that you will see your children's children. And it is amazing when God speaks through his children about life and hope. It's amazing what you cling to. And so when I got that prognosis, we can't really look a week out past your condition because of where you are with your health. I stopped and I said, well, God, what do you have to say? And I didn't even have to know the end of the story. I didn't even have to listen to that prognosis without knowing that I saw my future on the other side. And I felt like for about a week, God just held me in his hand like this. And I could just rest, and I could, and for lack of a better word, I could stand on his word and his promises, because he is a good father and they are true. And so I made it through that week. And on the other side of that week, my lungs were still very weak, but had gone from being, functioning at 20%, 22% to about 33%. And again, the prognosis that the medical team gave me, and they were experts, they were well trained in CF cases. They said, well, your lungs will probably never go past 50%. We may think it's best to even look at a transplant now. And I just kept my eye on the prize, which is what the Lord had spoken over my life. And I also knew that that the medical community sees, and they're trained and they're gifted and they have wisdom in what they've been trained to do. But there's a world out there where I would always just caution people or encourage people to say, but God, what do you have to say? It's not about what people see in the natural. It's about seeing with heavenly eyes. And I knew what God had already spoken over my life. I wasn't married at the time. It wasn't like I was about to fulfill this chapter of my life. It was that God had spoken over my life, and I stood on that. And so fast forward a month later, my lungs were functioning back at 50%. A month later, my lungs were functioning, not only had improved, but they were functioning perfectly at 100%. And I don't know what the case studies are out there, but I can tell you that for as low as my lungs have functioned for the last 12 years, my lungs have pretty much been functioning perfectly. And that alone is a miracle. But I have to say, and I know a lot of us who do walk with a disease. Notice I don't say I have CF, but it is a reality in my life that I battle this disease. There were days where I would get so hopeless because I wouldn't feel well. I would cough through the night. I would just need 45 minutes in my morning to either sleep or to get more work, or 45 minutes a night to be able to cook dinner. All these things that sometimes the weight of disease can just weigh on you. And I remember about 2 years ago, I'd had a little, and for the last 12 years, I've been very blessed and been very healthy, but there were times where I would get a PICC line, be on IV antibiotics, and felt a little incapacitated because I'm used to a full schedule. And I just remember asking, God, is this my fate forever? I know you've said that I will see my children and children's children. And I always loved that, being single most of my life. I said, well, at least I know I'll get married in that puzzle too that God gave me. But I say all that, it was just heavy thinking, I don't know that I've done this for, 30 something years. It's all I know. Can I keep going? And last year I did get married, so that part of God's prophetic word was also proven true, and was a joyful time. And a week after my wedding, went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, how would you like to feel even better? And I was like, well, I'm all for this. And of all the drugs that have come out for CF, over the past few years, the genetic mutation I had, I wasn't eligible for any of it. And so there was a new drug called Trikafta. I got on it last January, and it changed my life. And part of the bittersweet story has been the role of my parents in all of this, and the fact that they who grieve the loss of their first son, my older brother, were then confronted with a child with CF. And again, in 1984, 12 years was optimistic. And my parents, despite their own pain and loss, decided to believe that God would not only carry me those 12 years, but beyond. And so last January, I had the opportunity to get on this drug. And I mean, even within a week, I had stopped coughing entirely. And anyone who knows me knows that you would talk to me on the phone, or you would talk to me in person, or, if I went running. Sometimes it was hard for me to have a conversation because I couldn't stop coughing. A lot of times it would really interfere with work, or for me, a lot of times it would just interfere with my day-to-day life. I say all this, my mom called me and said, well, how do you feel? And I said, Mom, it's a miracle. I haven't coughed once. And just being on the drug for a week. And so my mom got very emotional and she let my dad know. And just a few days later, my dad was very unexpectedly taken to heaven from a heart attack. So I was so very thankful that my dad was able to witness and see part of his prayer answered. And my parents had both been very emotional and said, this is what we've been praying for 35 years. And, and my dad had always just been so burdened for me. And I think, he could leave knowing, very peacefully knowing that I was taken care of. And so I say all that. It's been a remarkable last year. I'm celebrating the 1-year anniversary of being on this miracle drug. And my life has changed completely. I now have 45 minutes in the morning and 45 minutes in the evening. I don't even need to do a breathing treatment. My lungs are functioning perfectly. I know what it's like to be able to sleep through the night without coughing, or to just not all of the so many ways that a genetic disease affects your body. It's like I have a whole new appreciation. And I'm just so incredibly moved how God has not only sustained my life, but restored it completely. And, I'm looking forward to the day, and I believe there will be a day where my testimony is, yes, I've been on this drug, but God has rewritten my DNA and I'm 100% healed. And I'm looking forward to the day where no one has CF anymore. And my encouragement is that, for so long, I've always thought we've had a nice dad. And I remember learning about deism when we were studying early American life, how some of the founding fathers, part of their faith tradition was they were a deist. And I always thought, well, that's sad, because the way it was explained to me is God set the world in motion and now we just exist. And, he kind of stays out. He's not the referee. And I realized a part of me, maybe that is how I viewed God. Like, I'm born with this disease. I'll wrestle it out. I'll battle it out myself. But no, I think God has stopped me in my tracks and said that he is our good father and that he is capable of miracles. And when you experience one yourself, when you're essentially dying, and then you're not only restored, but you're completely restored. I have always said, God wants us to see things with his eyes and to see things bigger. And so my encouragement to all of us is, anytime we see the world or hear a prognosis or a situation, it can be so heavy to see it with just our earthly eyes. But, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, and God has given us all authority in heaven and earth. And so my prayer is always, God, what do you have to say? Because I think we'll always be disheartened if we ask the why. There's so many people I know with CF who started on that journey with me that are no longer here. And if I were to ask God, why me, or why them, that they're not here, I don't know that I get an answer. I think in Job, we saw how those answers came. Instead, my prayer and my shift has been, God, what do you have to say? God, who are you in this situation? And I think we'll always be blown away. And I think for too long we've settled for the nice God who will always give wisdom to doctors, and I think those things are great, but I think we can ask for more because he is capable of more. And there's just this boldness rising up in me that the God who saved my life, the God who spoke hope over me in an unlikely situation, I stood on that and I saw the goodness of God in the land of the living. And so now when we look at this nation or the things that we're going through and just the heaviness around us, I will never stop saying, well, God, but you can do more. And so my prayer is that we would all be encouraged to just say, but God, who are you in this? What do you have to say? Because he is a God of the miracles. He is the God who heals miraculously. And I think part of being sick is letting God fight those battles for you. I see so many people that, I'm a such and such warrior. Or I battle this and I have this. Most people who know me know that I don't talk about cystic fibrosis. It's not part of who I am. And very literally, it's part of my genes, but it's not who God created me. Because I used to always say, well, if God gave me this sickness, I'll honor him with that. And I don't believe the heart of a good father is to ever give disease. And so I have always said, God, this is not from you. Take this from me, because it's more than I can bear. And so I just want to encourage everyone that that because we have a God who heals and who loves us, and because we have a loving Father, walking through sickness isn't taking that battle and heaping it upon our own shoulders and our burden that we have to fight this. And I feel that, the mornings I woke up and had to do my breathing treatment for 45 minutes, they weren't fun. I didn't want to do them. But ultimately, I would always pray, God, take this from me. Lord, heal me, because you are able. And so I think one of the things I learned was when you do carry sickness, and for me, it was 36 years of this, there's no remission, there's no, no real treatment up until last year that kind of eradicates everything. That my encouragement is that bitterness will always invite you to partner with it. That the enemy has a way of saying, oh yeah, you feel sorry for yourself. And, I think for me, one of the biggest battles I struggled with was the medical bill side of having a disease. It was so easy spending hours arguing with insurance companies on the phone, hours that I felt were precious. It would be so easy in those moments to be like, oh, this is horrible. I don't want to do this. But my encouragement is always, God is saying, come up higher. Don't keep your eyes focused on you. Don't keep your eyes focused on your sickness, but keep your eyes on me. What am I telling you, Jennifer? What do I have to say about your future? What do I restore? And the answer is the Lord restores everything. And so one thing that I really found that grew faith in my own life was being blessed by so many people in my life who spoke life over me. Even discussing this call and this video, Miss Ann was one of the people that prayed for me from the time I was an infant to here I am today. On my first day of kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher said, I was part of the Bible study that prayed for you the day you were born. And so I thank God every day that I come from not only a family of people who've just covered me in prayer, but a community. And I want to be that for someone else. And I think God is calling us in the midst of our own struggle and our own sickness to see his glory in other people's lives. And so about 8 years ago, I got involved in the healing rooms in Baton Rouge, and it's part of the Healing Rooms International. And twice a month we would meet on Sundays. And like a doctor's office, people would come in, fill out almost like a medical chart. We would pray over them. And through that, I began just seeing the tremendous heart God had for not only physical healing, but spiritual and emotional and mental healing. And just allowing God to use you as a vessel, speaking life in other people's life. Sometimes I was just so surprised at how clear God is when he speaks, because he's always speaking, and he's speaking life, and he uses us to do it. And so as people spoke life into my own life, I delighted in being able to speak life into other people, because it was so powerful, just being used by a tool. And, your eyes are no longer on, oh, woe is me, or this is heavy, or I don't want to do this. Your eyes are on the fact that we live in a fallen world, but God is bigger, God is greater, and his glory will be revealed not only in your own life, but in others. And so I got so encouraged just seeing the way that God spoke and worked through other people. And I just would encourage all of us as we go through things in life. No one's immune from, and that's why I always hated talking about my own struggles, because I know that I'm not the only one, whether it's CF for me, or cancer, or depression, or heart disease, whatever it is, or loneliness, all these things, they reflect the world we live in, but they don't reflect the God we serve. And so my encouragement is just begin asking God to see with his eyes. And I think, so many people were talking about the year 2020 as a year of perfect vision. And so I think that the Lord longs to perfect our vision. We only see in part, know in part, but thanks to his Holy Spirit, we do get a glimpse of what he's doing. We do get revelation. We do get words of knowledge. And so my excitement for what's in store for the body of Christ is that we are getting accelerated vision, to not only be able to take a prognosis and go straight back to the Father and say, this is what the doctor says, but I want to hear from you. Or this is what is going on in our nation, but I want to see what you're doing. And so my prayer and my hope is that through this season, we would begin not only expecting the miracles, but we would begin to see them. And so I delight in what God has in store for all of us. And again, I could just shout from the rooftop that the way I feel now, I never thought it's possible. And I know that whatever struggles you have, God has not called us to think small, but he's called us to say and to seek the heart of the Father and say, what are you doing? And so I look forward to being on this journey with all of us as we begin seeing the goodness of the Father and the miracles, and just the miraculous healings, like we've never seen that before. And again, I keep feeling like it's time. It's our time because of his heart for us. And I just pray blessings over everyone, and look forward to seeing what God has in store.